Afreilchen Chanukah, this is Gemar Nedarim Daf Nun Zayin. We pulled up a little bit short in the previous year. We're holding on Nun Vavam and Beis, about 14 lines from the bottom at the two dots, in which the Gemara says, "Nedarim min habayis einay aser elo min hagaf v'lifnim." That if someone makes a neder from entering into a house, the lacha is you're not allowed to enter from the agaf, from the door frame, v'lifnim, and inwards. So it begins the Gemara by asking, Avol, the obvious implication of the Mishnah is, min agaf v'lachutz loy, that you're allowed to enter from the door, that you're not allowed to enter from the door frame and inward. But from the agaf l'chutz, from the door frame and outward, seemingly, you are yes allowed to enter. Based on that implication, Masav Ramari asks Ramari from a pasuk. Says Ramari, it says V'yatza koyin min habayis, and the koyin yatza, he's leaving the house. So from this pasuk, we're going to try to extrapolate. If he's leaving the house, what is called the house that the koyin is leaving? Says the Gemara, Yachal, I would think, it says Ramari yilich lebeisoi v'yaskir. You would think what's going on over here from the pasuk that says that he leaves the house. We would think that after he looks, we're talking about he looks at a nega, he looks at teras on the wall. We would think that he goes back home, and what does he do? From the vantage point of his own home, he has a big long rope to this house of teras, and he closes it off. Talmud Leimer says the Torah, no el pesach habayis. Says the Torah, then no, then when do you close off the house from? The entrance of the house. And then continues the Gemara that el pesach habayis, if it was only from the entrance, he would think that he has to stand underneath the mashkoif, underneath the lintel, v'yaskir, and from that point, directly at the juncture between outside and inside, from the threshold under the lintel, he has to close off the house. Do you leave from the house, kuloi of the whole house? So we have on one hand, you would think one extreme, all the way into the kohen's house, and not just the house he's looking at. On the other house, you would think Pesach, for to specifically the Pesach, the entrance, mamash, literally underneath the lintel of the house. So what do you do? Explains Rav Mari, explaining these two psukim of Yotze min habayis and El Pesach habayis. He stands next to the mashkoif, the yaskir, and from that point he closes off the house. So ask the Gemara, that what do we see? And we see that the actual threshold itself, the actual mashkoif, the actual juncture point that we're discussing, the agaf, you're not allowed to enter. So says the Gemara, back Akash in our Mishnah, we just explained that min agaf l'chutz, you're not allowed to, is not included in the neder, but we see the opposite. So continues the Braisa. How do we know that if you did it b'di avad, you weren't supposed to? How do we know that if you did it, it's going to work? Talmud Loimar, says the Gemara, v'hiskir as abayis mikol makom. So number one, a din in teras, a din in nega, the b'di avad, it always works. But now asks the Gemara that we have a stira. What is the status of the agaf? What is the status of the mashkoif? From our Mishnah, it seems you're not allowed to enter into the house, but from the agaf, you're yes allowed to enter. From this dinim tzaras amari, it seems the opposite. Answers the Gemara, shiny gabe bayis. The case of saras, you can't ask from, is different in Ramari. Dechse min bayis. Because over there it's min habayis, you cannot enter the entirety of the house, so therefore it includes the mashkoif. But in our Mishnah, when we said that Nedarim min habayis einay aser then you're only forbidden to do what? From min al-gav v'lifnim, from entering inward. But the actual lintel you, yes, could enter is not a stira. Again, in the case of Ramar, you were darshaning up the pasuk. The pasuk articulated and honed in and zeroed in on the Pesach. Because of that, on the bayis kuloi, therefore you're not allowed to go into the lintel. But in the Lashon Nedarim is going to be different. And we turn over to Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, today's daf. And what we're going to see very quickly, which is unique about today's daf, is twofold. Number one that we're about to see is that there's going to be a whole Mishnah that we already dealt with extensively, daf Zayin. And number two, as we turn over to Amud Beis, we're going to begin a sugya of Isser V'Heter that's going to take us for the next few days. So let's begin with the Mishnah, Nun Zayin Amud Aleph, a classical Koina Beiros Elu Alai, so makes a neder that these fruits are forbidden to me, or Koina Mehein Alpi, they are forbidden to my mouth, or Koina Mehein the Lipi, they are forbidden to my mouth. What is the halacha? Aser, number one. Bichilufeim ubigeduleim. They are forbidden. Not only are they forbidden, well, the fact that they're forbidden is pashit, but you're not going to get benefit from chilufeim, that which you exchange for them, and giduleim, which is, we've seen, that which grows from it. But if he says, shani oichel shani tayim, I will not eat it, I will not benefit from it, I won't taste it, mutter b'chilufeim giduleim, then the only fruit itself, and we brought this as a proof a few days ago, that only the fruit itself is forbidden, but the exchange and the growth is permitted. But it modifies the Gemara, and this is the Chiddush number one of the Mishnah, that these halachas are only when the zaroi, the zera, the seed, is kala, decomposes in the ground, then the aforementioned halachas apply. Avo bedavar she'ein zaroi kala, but if the seed does not decompose, afilu gidule masurin. This is a halacha that we have not mentioned until now. We've spoken many times. Koine peiros elu, shani oichel, the difference between the fruit itself and the giduleim and chilufeim. But now the Mishnah says that's all nice and dandy. If the seed is no longer, then we could judge what is the status of that which comes from or that which grows from based on the wordage of his neder. But if the seed itself does not decompose, then we learn. Then the din is that the giduleim and even giduleim, even 2 steps removed, are forbidden. Why are they forbidden? For the simple reason that they're all an extension of the seed which still is around. That is part A of the Mishnah. And now we begin part B of the Mishnah, is the part that we mentioned, that we've seen already. If someone says to his wife, your earnings are forbidden to me, they're forbidden to my mouth, to my mouth, then but if he said, then only they themselves are forbidden. Again, and the Mishnah explains, next thing about one's wife's earnings. That which you make, I will not eat until Pesach. That which you create, I will not cover myself until Pesach. So if she makes it before Pesach, then if she creates it before Pesach, then what is the halacha? Then he's yes allowed to benefit from it. He's yes allowed to eat it when achar Pesach. But if he says that which you make before Pesach I will not eat, then also Pesach. Excuse me, I apologize that you couldn't see the text. There it is. Let's. Now we just messed the whole thing up. One more time. Okay, let's just go back, and we should reread this anyways. It'll add a drop of clarity. One more time. Shat oiseh eina miskavin ada Pesach. Also of nei Pesach, motulech v'liskasas achar Pesach. Then he's yes allowed to get benefit. But if he says shat oiseh ada Pesach, if the neder was that which created before Pesach, then eina oichel vat eina oichel. Shat oiseh ada Pesach eina miskaseh, that which you create I will not cover myself with. Then what is the halacha? Then the halacha is asl of nei Pesach, if she makes it before Pesach, asl lechov liskases achar ha-Pesach. Period. Okay, so depending on the term of the neder is going to determine when he cannot use it. It continues the Mishnah, 2 lines at the bottom of the Zayin and Aleph. Shanehenes li'ara Pesach. If he says to his wife before Pesach, that which you're going to give benefit to me until Pesach, if you go to your father's house until Chag, until Sukkot, then the halacha is that if she goes before Pesach, asura ba'nasa ada Pesach, then she cannot get benefit until Pesach, because that was the word of the neder. But as we turn over to Nun Zayin Amid Beis, continues the Mishnah, la'achar Pesach. But if she goes after Pesach, then bebal yachel, then the halacha is she violates bal yachel. Continues the Mishnah. Shan Enesli, and that was the part that we spoke about previously on Daf Tezayin. Shan Enesli arachag imolechas ala beis avicha ara Pesach. Now he makes two things dependent upon each other. He says before Pesach, you cannot get any benefit to me. He's talking to his wife. If you go to your father's house until Sukkot. So now, excuse me, you cannot get benefit from me until Sukkot if you go to your father's house until Pesach. So if she goes, then of course, she can't get any benefit. But after Pesach, when the time of the neder is finished, she can yes go to her father's house. Okay, now that we got the Mishnah under control, multiple aspects of the Mishnah, let's begin the Gemara, as the Gemara is going to slowly and meticulously, as always, work through this Mishnah. So begin the Gemara on Nedarim and Beis. Nedarim and Beis, beginning the Gemara, which is 4 lines down. The first part of the Mishnah, someone says to his wife, your earnings are usher to me, to my mouth, I won't eat them. Says the Gemara, Yishmael ish Kfar Yama. Yishmael from a place called Kfar Yama, or he lived on the ocean side. Now, just to mention, the Gemara is going to begin right now, and it's going to seemingly have absolutely nothing to do with our Mishnah. We're going to have to wait a good 2 days till it's going to circle back around to our Mishnah. But Yishmael ish Kfar Yama, va'amri la ish Kfar di Yama, hela biyada batzel. So he had in his hand the following case. Hela biyada, a batzel, an onion, she'akroi bishvius. In this case, we have to understand clearly, as this is going to again be the case that's going to carry us through the next 2 days. So we have an onion that was uprooted on Shvius, which of course means this is an onion that has status of Kedusha Shvius, an onion that one is not allowed to get benefit from. But vinot oi bishminis. Then the onion sticks around to the 8th year. This onion is forbidden. The onion then is replanted in the 8th year. Then what happens? V'rabu gidulav ali kari. There are more offshoots of this onion than the original onion. So we have an onion that is forbidden, that is now planted in the 8th year and grows, of course. Now the question is, there's many offshoots more than the onion itself. So what is the question? Explains the Gemara. The following question was posed to Yishmael ish Kfar Yama, or Yishmael ish Kfar Diyama. Gedulav heter v'ikaroi iser. The status over here is that which grows is mutter. The ikar, the onion itself, is forbidden. It came from Shemitah. Kivan derabu gedula meikaroi. Since there's more growth than the original onion itself, oisan gedule heter ma'alin es iser. Do we say that the permitted nullifies, overtakes the Isser, and therefore you could eat everything? Oi, loy, or not. Now, what exactly is the Gemara's question? So again, case, forbidden onion from Shemitah, planted in the 8th year, more offshoots than forbidden onion. Are you allowed to benefit from this whole story? The wording of the Gemara sounds very, very simply that we are taking on as a davar pashit, that which grows from the onion, and this is indeed how the Rosh Taisus explain that that which grows from the onion is mutter, and it's as simple as servater shaila. Do we say that when something grows from a dvar iser, and now there's more dvar heter than dvar iser, does the dvar heter nullify mevatel the dvar iser? The Ran learns it's a little bit more fundamental in the Gemara Shaila. And one case to keep in mind, one detail I should say to keep in mind, this is a big discussion, all the Mefarshim over here, is the original onion is still here. So the original onion, to be mevatel it, of course, perhaps is more difficult. Why? Because everything came from it. And this is obviously where everything's going to come back around in a day or two, that it's all gidulov. So can an offshoot be mevatel, nullify the original entity itself? That's really at the crux of the sugya, being that the original entity is a davar chashiv, is being that the original entity is where everything came from. So that's the basic shaila without getting involved in all the different shitos. The Ran, the Rosh, Taisus, Rashi, Mefarish, how to learn the Gemara Shaila. We have a forbidden onion that was planted in the 8th year, many offshoots. Can you now get benefit from the whole entity? So also they came to Ravami, love, he didn't have an answer. Also, and he answered, Minadad Amar Rav Chanina, that was Rav Chanina said the following. Tirito Amar Rav Yanai. It said in the name of Rav Chanina Trita, that was his name, in the name of Yanai. Batzel shal truma shenatu. We have a similar case, says the Gemara. If I have a truma onion which is forbidden to get benefit from, that what? Was planted, and then V'Rabbi Gidula V'Alikarai, and there's more offshoots mutter. So seemingly we have a perfect comparison that just like there's more offshoots than onion in the case of the truma mutter, so too in our case there's more offshoots from the 8th year than the 7th year. It should be mutter as well. Amar le Rav Yirmiyah, so Rav Yirmiyah says Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, Vitem Rav Zvika, some say it was Rav Zvika, Shavik Gemar Train V'Avik Echad. I don't understand. You put aside 2 opinions that say it's forbidden, and you grabbed upon one opinion that says it's mutter. Meaning, you just quoted us a brisa memor of Rav Chanina Terita that said the case of Basel Shal Truma that's mutter, but asks Rav Yirmiyah, asks Rav Zrika, we know a different 2 brisas that say it's forbidden. Ma niu trey, who are those 2 that hold it's aser? Damar Ravu, Amar Rav Yechanan, Yolda shesivcha bezkeina. If we have a fresh onion, a yolda, a young, under 3-year-old onion that was grafted, or not onion, or fruit, that was grafted together with an old tree, uba peiros, and then what happens? The young tree had fruit. It's grafted with an old tree. Aval bisha isivu masayim. Even though the fruit now increases 200-fold to aser, it's still forbidden. Since the original yolda was arla, was forbidden, was a fruit that you cannot get benefit from, even though now it's grafted and grows 200 times, it's still aser. So we see opinion number 1, Rav Yavua, name of Rav Yechanan, that when the offshoots, even when they're much more than the original fruit themselves, still it is forbidden. Number 1. V'amar Rav Shmuel bar Rabbi Nachmani Rav Yenis on opinion number 2, that's forbidden. Batzel shenata bekarem v'neker akarem. What happens if the batzel was planted in a vineyard? And what happens? V'nekar hakaren. And, when it was planted, it was kalayim, explains the Mefarshim. And then v'nekar hakarem. And what happens is, then the vineyard is uprooted. And when the vineyard is uprooted, the onion continues to grow. So similar story. It starts as Isser, as Kalayim, and then it continues to grow as Heter. Also, it is forbidden, even though there's going to be much more Heter than Isser, it's still forbidden. So we have 2 opinions that hold it's Asr, even when there's more Heter than Isser. Again, perhaps because it came from the Isser, perhaps because the Isser is a Davar Chashiv, etc. So how could you, asks the Gemara of Yitzchak Nafcha, actually, how could you come along and be paishit from the case of batzel shel truma that it's mutter? So answers the Gemara, Hadar asli kamed Rav Ami, the Gemara of Rav Ami, upashe leini explain min adada amar, a 4th brisa of Yitzchak Amar Rav Yechanan litra bitzalim shetikna vizara me'as ras. Then what is the story if you have a liter of onions that you did not take off meiser, that you fix them shetikna by taking off trumas meiser, and then vizara, then you replanted it. Me'as misaseres lefi kula. The halacha is you have to take off meiser according to everything. Alma, so what do we see? Isaac Gedulin Meval in Iker. We see that even though it started off as Iker, Isser, the new Gedulim are Mevatalit. So explains the Gemara, it's really 50-50, and we're able to lean towards the heter based off of the second brisa that's mekel. We're going to pick it up from the Gemara over here, because the Gemara responds, Dilmer l'chumra shiny. Maybe that case is different, as it's only l'chumra. So we're going to leave it over here as it stands right now. We have sort of 50-50, two brises saying la'esar, two brises saying laheter. The last case of laheter, we're saying maybe just l'chumra it's mevatel, so we can't bring a proof from there. And again, a forbidden onion that was replanted and there's more heter than isser, what is the status? Which eventually will come all the way back around to our Mishnah when one says to his wife, koinem eis yedecha alai, or koinem eim lefi, etc. We'll pick it up from here in the next year, b'siyata dishmaya.